All right, so that is right at the top of the hour. It's time to begin our webinar today. Again, I'm Joe McClary. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the International Association for Continuing Education and Training. We've partnered with Citant today to bring you this webinar on building an e-learning business around continuing education and training. Before we begin, I'd like to go over just a few things. This webinar is designed to be interactive. So at any time, if you'd like to raise your hand, we'll be glad to unmute you and call on you to ask your question. Or if you don't want to say it out loud, feel free to type the question in your question area, and we will pause to answer those questions. Pause to answer those questions in due course during the presentation, and I know Vicki is anxious to be engaged with each of you. So please do not consider this essentially just a webinar with no interaction. We want to interact with you. We want your questions. We want your thoughts and ideas. So keep that in mind as we proceed. Also, too, this is your go-to webinar panel, and you're going to see a few things here. We don't have any handouts today, so you don't have to worry about that middle box. But keep in mind, if you have audio trouble, oftentimes it is your local area network or your internet connection. Feel free, if you're having trouble with that, is to change your audio method to phone, and you just use your phone to dial in, and you'll still be able to see the webinar, but get the audio and resolve any problems that you may have there with that. Keep that in mind, that that's an option. If you'd like to raise your hand when we ask a question, or if you have a question that you would like to ask, feel free to raise your hand, and I will note that on our screen. We will note that, and then we will inform our presenter today, Vicki, of that question, and you will interact with her accordingly. So that's that. So I'm going to go ahead now, and we will hand over our presentation to Vicki. And as we are doing that, Vicki, I'm handing the presentation over to you right now. And as we're doing that, and as she's getting her webinar set up, we can now see her screen. And let me introduce Vicki to you. Vicki Mossman is the Vice President of Partner Development at Citant. Citant is an e-learning company based out of Charlottesville, Virginia. Her position includes strategic account sales and marketing planning, as well as commercialization of online partner content. She's been with Citant for 11 years. She's a creative sales strategist for over 30 years of experience developing direct channel and partnership businesses in the healthcare, association, and for-profit sectors. Most recently, she has successfully helped organizations like the American Heart Association, which I'm sure we've all heard of, the American Medical Informatics Association, and the American Academy for Advancement of Science grow their e-learning businesses. And we are thrilled to have Vicki here today to share a little bit with us about building an e-learning business around continuing education and credentialed training. Vicki, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Joe. And welcome everybody and thank you for joining us. One of the things that happened yesterday as we were preparing for the webinar, we did a readiness check with Joe, and he was going through all the details to prepare for today. And he said at the end, enjoy yourself. And then I remembered that just relieved me so much of putting it together, etc. And I thought, I want to invite all of you attendees to also kind of join in, share, and as colleagues, let's all enjoy ourselves today. Take what you can, what nuggets that apply to your business, and let's just learn today together. So let me get started. We have a lot of material to cover. It's an hour, so we're going to move very quickly. So let's first talk about our learning objectives. We can't be in learning without starting out here. And so we're going to cover in our agenda the value of credentialing and continuing education. We're going to have some success strategies that we'll go through very quickly. Business intelligence, how important that is to your business, and summarize in some final points. And I'll share some resources with you at the end of the presentation. Our learning objectives today we're going to focus on is to learn how to maximize the reach and the revenue of continuing education. You'll be really I think I want to focus a little bit on the pricing strategy around, if you're trying to develop some penetration into the B2B markets, how might you do that and really capture the corporate volume learners that you need through channel distribution today. This is particularly, I like to start with this, and Joe mentioned the Kirkpatrick's method. I mean, we hear this all the time. Start with the end in mind. And I think it's important to really get clear about the future that you want to create for yourself and for your organization when you're not only starting your e-learning business, but when you have a mature business. Go back and visit your vision. I don't know if any of you have read the recent book by Erica Anderson. It's called Be Bad First. Get good at things fast and stay ready for the future. But I mean, I think this, I've listed it in the resource section at the end of the webinar, but we all know it's hard to be a novice and there's a lot of risk in not looking good, but this is where learning happens. So the way to surf through change, and we live in such a changing environment, so that you can continue to thrive in that change as you are creating your business and building it, is important. So I'd really recommend taking a look at that resource because it'll inspire you. Build in and make changes to your program to make sure that you are constantly doing a recheck on what you're that goal that you're trying to achieve. Because our goal is when we build these businesses to really try to increase that rate of adoption so that you can serve your industry in the best way that you can. And remember that it's all done through your business planning and through not forgetting what your strategic goals are first. Now we're going to pause right now and get to know everyone. So Joe's going to take over with some polling questions. What stage are you in this business?
We just presented our first polling question. We'll give you all a few minutes to go ahead and answer those. If you want to take a look, we see the answers are coming in now as we speak. Give you just a couple minutes to go ahead and look at those, read those, and take a look and give us your thoughts. All right. You can give about another 5 seconds. All right, let's go ahead and we will share. Vicki, what are your thoughts on those results?
Well, that's interesting. So there is half of the group here that has been doing this for a long time, and they're really looking for some nuggets around how to grow their business. So that's good to know. We want to make sure that you're meeting your needs here in the webinar. And then it looks like we're split a little bit here on you're relatively mature already, and there's 24% that are just getting started. So let's try to cover as much as we can. It doesn't sound like we have any rookies on board, so you haven't just joined the organization and you're trying to dive into a program that you don't know about. So let's definitely speak to some of your needs throughout the webinar today.
All right, back to you, Vicki.
Okay, good. I know there's one more question, I think, that we were just going to try to also pull, get an idea of a little bit about your organization. Do you come from a for-profit organization or a non-profit organization?
All right. We have launched that poll and we have the results coming in now. It looks like, wow, Vicki, I think you'll be impressed that we have a very mixed group. Let's close this and share those results. 50-50, almost exactly.
Oh, that's great. Okay. I think there's more similarities than people think in serving a for-profit organization and a nonprofit, because I look at sustainability is always an important area when you're growing any business. So usually in a nonprofit sector, we call this surplus revenue, and in the for-profit, it's about that bottom line. So we have some similar key drivers in both sectors, so we'll cover that. Okay, let's get moving. Let's see here. Okay, we're going to cover the value of credentialing. And since we know half of you have been doing this for some time, I think it is important to review this area. Your organization, whether you're a for-profit or a nonprofit, is a rich home for thought leadership. Your subject matter experts, whether in your nonprofit sector, this is a forum. Your membership is key to a place where they can share ideas. And this is where their experience, where they can give back to their profession. And these committees of experts are the ones that really establish those core competencies. And this is really where a SME can pay it forward. And obviously in a for-profit sector, some folks come out and they just have a lot of expertise, or they've been well-known authors in certain areas. So this thought leadership really does serve both the area of for-profit and nonprofit. So it's important to make sure that you're always leveraging your reputation and developing that body of knowledge, which is very valuable IP. Now, setting the standards and maintaining standards, we know credentialing helps establish really and implement best practices and setting and maintaining standards. So this will allow you to really serve your industry, whether you set that standard or the organizations like the ones on board establish that. This is how you can drive and really support the community that you serve and drive quality, and that's key. And obviously in best practices is providing guidance to your learner audiences no matter where they are in their career path is important. For example, in any early career professional, a novice really needs to build a foundation of knowledge just to get started and get on the right track. So you're grooming that membership, but you're also serving the industry by building that future labor pool as you increase that by supporting them with some of the basics in your educational initiatives. As busy professionals today, we all go through times of self-reflection. We ask ourselves, where do we want to go from here? So it's only natural to go looking for a credential to really increase your options as a learner. This, I believe, is where tenured professionals also need to be served, because continuing education is an important way to really give them credit for what they know and challenge them with advanced content. I'd like to go into a case study. We've had the pleasure and really the honor to serve the American Heart Association since 2004 in our organization. And as a science organization, we worked with the Emergency Cardiovascular Care Division, who leverages an amazing network of dedicated volunteers that compile scientific findings. And then they come into consensus to create what's called the guidelines. Then American Heart Association publishes this to the world. And then it's adopted by healthcare professionals and institutions as a standard of care. Why is that important? It really ensures the latest evidence is that this is evidence-based medicine that all the practitioners are following when they're in our patient experience. So it touches all of our lives. And this is very important to creating quality in an ongoing way as science changes. So this, I mean, one slide, I can't even tell you what an amazing process this is that goes on around the world as they compile the scientific findings. It's just amazing. And the amount of effort and resources that go and get involved in this is fantastic. From those guidelines then, the various curricula for credentialed training programs is developed. So then that's where they get that body of knowledge, and it's cutting edge, and it's looked at in a cycle. And so that we know that it's cutting edge, that all practitioners need to learn about. Then AHA uses a blended learning model where the learning's paired with skills demonstration, because with CPR, that's a psychomotor skill. So obviously learning the cognitive portion in a very consistent way is done first. And then they're paired with a mentor, a instructor that is a skilled professional that can demonstrate, they can practice and demonstrate skills, which then validates that they're ready to go and they can serve a patient in the proper way. So that's how that process happens. So there's a lot that goes into developing the content with the American Heart Association. And we're talking about serving many millions of learners since we began this, and really built the adoption program with an organization like this to really move from print-based materials and instructor-led to a much more efficient and really strong model. Then, obviously, one of the areas that is key to any organization is that surplus revenue. So the business value to CE programs is clearly important. With no money, there is no mission. So you got to generate revenue that pays for all of the ongoing costs and to fuel your growth. And I'm really more convinced than ever of the value of credentialing and maintaining those credentials, because it really builds that pipeline of learners. People need a trusted source for learning. They need this to be tailored to their profession and delivered in an up-to-date manner. So as you can see, all of the exterior areas, this supports advocacy, it supports research, it feeds into the overall mission of any organization as well. So we can't forget that it takes money to fuel these kinds of programs. I'd like to jump in and give you another case study. You're probably thinking, what does this have to do with credentialing? Well, I wanted to show you a B2C model, and lynda.com is so well known. It's a great example. We're operating in such a world where there's change is constant, there's constant connections, there's abundant choices to make out there. And this B2C business case really validates to me that there's an appetite for lifetime learning. First of all, in our world, people are searching for trusted learning sources. So as evidence in companies like this, we can see what happened with lynda.com is they first started in 1995. And then in 2002, they launched their first courses. And then by 2005, they had a product offering of over 100 courses online. Then in 2013 and 14, they acquired a couple of companies. Then in 2015, they raised up over 186 million in financing, which then they were acquired by LinkedIn for 1.5 billion. That's a lot of money. And then in 2016, they were bought by Microsoft for 26.2 billion. So you can see this organization is serving a B2C community because there is appetite out there. There is this trend. But it doesn't serve the learner audience that needs that focused tailored learning that is specific to their profession. But it does show us that there's quite an appetite. They do about 103 million in revenues annually. But I'd like to then turn to this report. And I have provided you the link so you can download this yourself, because I think it's going to tell us a lot about where we're headed. And there's a lot of forecasts about how the global e-learning market is actually in a steep decline. Well, this is a mixed message, isn't it? We have a 2016 report, so it's very fresh. And Ambient Insights, by the way, in this report, it's a very current analysis. Sam Adkins is the chief researcher in this report. And he shares why packaged content is declining. But credentialed content related to licensure is not declining. And that's important, because there are a lot of organizations that just want to create content that's related to any topic, and you really need to be thoughtful in developing your content roadmap, because it may not actually be needed. You really need to focus in these areas. So in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a trend there that shows that this market's about 28 billion here. And over on the right, it's very fuzzy. That's why I want you to, I couldn't get that image any clearer. But I want you to download this as your time allows, if you're interested. But this charts out 60 professions, which is about 31 million employees in the United States that require in their work some type of CE or CME credit in different fields. And it's just interesting to look at where those 31 million learners live. And then obviously on the bottom table, which is very clear, we can see in the healthcare sector, we have a growth rate of about 7.4%, and revenues for courses will reach 1.7 billion by 2021 in this sector, and still shows a growth rate just for CME of 7.6. And so these numbers, and that's why I really recommend you read this report. These numbers are confusing, but they'll tell you, we don't really have time to discuss it on this webinar today, but they'll tell you reasons why. And these are indicators that I think you should pay attention to as you're developing your content, and some of the decisions you make in your business. Let's move to the next slide. I just want to talk a little bit about credentialing courses for B2B. This is important because I really believe that your learners live in their profession somewhere, and that's the audience you want to find. So they're working or they're trying to get a job, and this is why going after your B2B market is very important. Continuing education in that profession and providing that personalized experience around that credential by industry experts really guides that learner pathway so there's advancement in their field. And a credentialing pathway to mastery really helps stretch and build skills, and this professional development strengthens the workplace as a whole, but most of all, you're providing value to employers. Quality training will increase business performance, and that's an important area around credentialing, so that in your value proposition to the B2B market becomes very essential. Online courses without credit just are not tailored to meet the learner need in a thoughtful, sequential manner, and those learners don't know what they don't know. So relying on a selection, just student selection, an employer does that, and they may not really have a nice learning track. So when you're approaching that B2B market, you want to be able to add some value to the CV and to the resume of those students as they go to work, and they want to be able to advance themselves in the organization that they're working for. So I think this is one of the ways that going to after your B2B market is going to be critical for you to build your business. And let me move on. And let's stop here because I'd like to really have people share from your area if you have any questions or comments or some ideas that you can share at this point.
All right, so we appreciate Vicki opening that up for some questions. If you have a question, take a moment to think about what that is. Feel free to raise your hand or type your question in the box. Vicki, I have just a few questions here we can get started with. And one of those goes back to a few slides you had back before when you were talking about organizations like the American Heart Association developing their own content, building standards around those content, and building education from that. One of the big challenges I'm sure most of the people in this audience have is overcoming the obstacles to just get to that content after a standard is maintained. Could you talk about just maybe from your experience, and I know this may be a little bit outside the bounds, but since it's so prevalent to this topic, I think it's important. What are some tips that you've seen that help associations overcome just getting the content? So, for example, are they using more staff to help drive some of the work behind that development, or are they using all volunteers? We all know volunteerism is on the decrease in many areas, and so it's more and more challenging to get volunteers to volunteer to create that content and those standards. What are your thoughts on how the associations you've seen, how are they overcoming those obstacles to develop their content?
I think how you leverage the volunteer is critical, and putting form and structure around tapping into very busy professionals is important. As you said, people have so much to do in a day. So leveraging the volunteer properly, I do think that the power of focusing on the SMEs in your community is important, because that is how you build adoption. You need to have this more customer-centric, and they are the expert. They live in that community. So I really, really believe in that. How you do it is depending upon your internal resources. Instructional design is critical in any credentialing. So if you don't have instructional design expertise, you can get that. You can snap that into your, outsource that, partner with organizations to get the right instructional design for the audience that you serve. And that's critical, is teaming up, learning from your SMEs about the content, but also learning from the audience that it's designed for. So it depends on your internal resources on how you do it. But I really believe that managing expertise and managing volunteer effort is important, and using some of the technology tools to manage that. I believe they really want to give back to their community, but they want their time to be respected. So strong project management is one skill that you really need to really do that. But I kind of feel like it's collaboration and pairing your team with leveraging the power of your community is key. I hope that helps.
Sure, absolutely. We have a question from Leah J. Leah asked regarding the report that you had referenced. Is that relative to licensure in CE? Is that available as a free resource, and can we have a copy or get a link to that?
Absolutely. I've actually listed it I have some final slides at the end of the webinar where I've listed a lot of resources, and I put that there. It's definitely available at no charge on the internet. So I recommend you download it and you digest it, because it's some areas that are not, probably may not relate to your business, but there are many areas in there where you can gain some insight specific to your particular need.
All right. Very good. That answers her question. One of the things that we're waiting for any other additional questions to come in here. We don't have any at this juncture, so we'll be ready to move on in just a minute. But I wanted to underscore some of the results in that report, Vicki, from my experience recently in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates particularly. One of the big trends there is a departure. As a matter of fact, the world's largest company. It's an oil company. It's the Saudi Arabian oil company. I was meeting with their director of education and professional development, and they essentially said that they are moving away from packaged content. They need more custom, more specific training around the objectives that they want to achieve. So I thought that was very, very interesting. We've heard that a lot around the continuing education and training circles, and I thought I would mention that. Will we have access to the slides after the presentation? I know that will we be able to make this presentation available to our group? Can I make that available in the handouts area here, Vicki?
Absolutely.
Okay. So in the next few minutes, as Vicki continues, I will upload this to your handouts area. It's quite large. Hopefully it'll fit. If not, you will have access to a video afterwards, but we'll try to get that to you post-haste now. So, Vicki, that's all the questions we have right for now. If you'd like to continue, I think that would be great.
Well, that's so interesting that you used that example of the Saudi Arabian oil company. I was actually raised by a physician. My father worked for Aramco, and I actually lived in Dhahran and had the professional opportunity to go back there several years ago and call on that particular company myself with one of our customers. And so it was just a really fun thing to do, since I was raised there in my youth, and learn a little bit about that marketplace and what their needs are as they build infrastructure in the Middle East countries. So that was interesting that you shared that.
Dhahran was where we came, so very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we'll move on. Do you have any poll questions here, or I think we can probably just move on to some of our success strategies.
We have another poll question here regarding the objectives of online credentialing programs. Did you want to execute that one?
That'd be great.
All right. Here's another poll question for us. What is the #1 objective for your online credentialing programs? If you'd like to go ahead and engage and choose an answer. We have, it takes everybody just a moment to read those options. And the results are coming in now. We'll give just another moment or so. All right, poll questions up. We still have answers coming in. We see the live results. Wow, this is going to be a very interesting one, Vicki. It looks like the results are going to be a little lopsided here on our choices. I'm going to go ahead and close that in about 3 seconds. All right, so we'll share the results. Take a look at those results. What are your thoughts?
Wow, that's great. I like this answer, because I do think that you need to you have to do, well, those are my top two as well. I think that it's very important to support an industry. And I think it naturally the money follows, but there are some specific things you need to do to make that happen. I think there is member value, but that is not a key driver. I think it's a secondary benefit of the program. So I kind of, I'm with the audience here. So good. Let's do it.
All right. All right. We had one poll question left regarding the overall strategic goals. I don't know if you want to go to that one now or wait till later.
Yeah, let's wait till later. I think I'd like to jump into success strategies. And now this section I've built to kind of first just talk about some B2C strategies for you, and then jump into some B2B strategies. And these are just nuggets. So if you're maybe just to kind of jar your ideas and get you thinking about what you're doing internally. We obviously can't go through an entire sales and marketing planning session, but we can talk about some key success strategies. So let's move forward here and run through this as quickly as we can. Oh, by the way, we have to get a plug-in. Citon is located in Charlottesville, Virginia. And, you know, if we don't have some kind of UVA sports slide in any one of our presentations, we're just in big trouble. So, but I tie this in because I want you to understand that I really believe that making sure that you're selling inside your organization is important. Having a home team advantage, so particularly in the nonprofit sector, make sure that you're leveraging all of the opportunities within your organization, internal relationships. Who are the departments you work with? Your volunteers and mentors are your ambassadors. How do you engage them? It's, you know, you want to be fully integrated into your own organization, weaving programs together with your online learning. For example, if you do some workshops or people come into your main headquarters office, try to think of a way to blend learning and send out some of the prerequisite learning first. So weave education all the way through your entire organization, because you will build stronger adoption and growth by doing that. Also, identifying internal communication pathways is very important. Leverage that. Do not really try to break out of the silos that exist in every organization. Get a spreadsheet, map out the opportunities in your whole organization, newsletters, journal ads, your committee communications, training center, messaging, live events, obviously, the annual meetings are a good place, sister societies. Also recognize there are protected relationships in your organization, and find out who can bring you into some of those so that you're leveraging that as well. I think I always start sell on the inside before you come out of the outside, because it will increase your awareness, brand awareness, and get you more integrated into the overall strategic objectives of your organization as a whole. Now let's talk a little bit about the role of technology. I hate to tell everybody this, but I just don't believe growing an e-learning business it's not focused on the LMS. So we know that your learning lives in an LMS, but it cannot be focused on that, because, well, here at Citon, we're very agnostic about LMS technology. There's some things that you need to make sure that you're listening to, as doing things to make the user experience stronger, like having SSO, a single sign-on experience, making sure that you are developing a mobile strategy if you don't have one already. What are your distribution? How can you distribute and connect your content into other organizations is going to be important to you as well. So I just popped in some Brandon Hall research there for you. It's not shocking to me. For the last 5-6 years, I've been going to learning conferences, and I'm always appalled that you'll go to a session that says, all about how to RFP for your technology. Well, I just don't think that's the key driver of your business. It's one of the factors, but there are many other solutions that you can snap into your business to help you grow. Also, market research is important. So these 3 sources are very trusted sources. I've added the links to the resource area as well. I think that making sure that you're constantly validating your assumptions, with data that you're gathering from the market is important. Our mantra at Scitent is to dream big, be agile, but be able to iterate, but make sure that you're constantly checking the market. And remember that you can't serve everyone. Define who you serve so that you don't dilute your brand. Learn about and from your target learners, and continually go back to your sources to make sure you're on track. So these sources should help you. Now, learners versus buyers. So we know you get so involved in building your content around what the learner needs are. You need to know about those learners just from a B2C standpoint. You need to know where they live, what's the stage they are in their profession, how can we learn from them, right? They're, and also, are they millennials, or, there's all kinds of things that you need to know about your learners, obviously. But then also don't forget about the feedback loops that come back, where do you learn from your learners? How can you communicate with them directly? How can you survey them and listen to their needs directly? So be sure that they also want you to hear from them. So make sure you kind of figure out that in your plan and that you're tapping into that all the time. Keep your finger on the pulse of the learner. Now, I'm just going to give you a couple examples that I think are good examples of, as you're starting to look at how organizations serve their communities. And I selected nonprofit associations. I mean, they're serving a large community. We've got the National Landscape Association of Landscape Professionals on the left here. And then I selected IACET, who is a large organization here that serves maybe 150,000 members in 177 countries. And they've just, by the way, launched a Raise the Bar initiative. So they're really driving quality with their civil engineers. And this is a great initiative because when you think about it, we're all winners on that. Civil engineers design and build and maintain a foundation for modern society. So you're talking about roads and bridges and drinking water and all this. So always looking at those civil engineers and where do they live, but who are they? That's your B2C strategy. Now, Heart and Stroke of Canada, for example, in this particular website that we built for them, this learning portal, is actually bringing in learners. They have to select their language first. So they learned that their learners want to perhaps take this course in Canadian French or Canadian English. So they select their language before they enter. So they really made a very personalized experience for their learner for a public access defibrillation program. And of course, the national, I'll go back again to National Association of Landscape Professionals, because they're serving member organizations. And those organizations want to drive quality because they know if they provide good learning to employees within these organizations, it's going to help consumers select groups that are working on the lawns and landscaping, et cetera. They're going to select companies that are affiliated with their organization because they are driving quality there, and safety. They're keeping ahead of safety as well. So these are a lot of the reasons why you want to make sure that your credential is out there. And obviously we know that over 50% of the attendees of this webinar today are serving their community in a similar way. So Vicki, here comes on beat.
Vicki, this is Joe. We had if you go back to that previous slide just for a moment, we had a really great question from one of our members, Randy W. He's online today, and he is from the engineering space, and he had this question. When you're looking at the specific industries and the different organizations that you have here, Randy's interested to know perhaps what specific measures need to be taken to address industry needs. And I'm sure everybody has a basic list in their mind, but perhaps you could offer some comments about if you were to walk into one of these industries and begin to analyze their needs, what would be some of the measures that you would take to identify what those needs would be?
Well, for example, with the American Society of Civil Engineers, they're a very mature organization. They were founded in like 1852. So their e-learning is extreme. They have a large portfolio of learning. And the first thing you have to do is really audit areas of your business. And I would audit the learning portfolio. And then I would survey my audience, because if you audit out of a large portfolio, what is the 20/80 rule? I mean, what is the consumption? What style of learning is it? Is it webinar based? Is it guided, instructor led? So you're seeing an appetite from learners to go into a lot more advanced ways of delivery, and you're also seeing a need for micro learning in the audience. So I would make sure that I would be auditing the current course catalogs at all times and keeping in check. Keep your learning content vibrant. You're going to need, you might be needing to drip content out to your learners so that you can engage them and build retention strategies with the content. So auditing aspects of your business. So I think we're going to address this a little bit at the end of the webinar, because let the data of your business drive your decision making. So business intelligence is very important to your growth. So I can't say for any specific one, but look where the pain is. Make sure you're listening to the buyers of content as well as the learners of content, and find out what their needs are. I hope that helps.
I'm sure it does. One of the things that IACET requires as a part of its accreditation is a needs analysis. And there are numerous measures that could go into a needs analysis based upon the members. So what I'm going to do is there's a great book published by ASTD, or the American Society or the Association for Talent Development. And I'm going to put right now in the chat area the book that we would point you to in regard to developing a needs assessment. Great book. I've got it. I've referenced it before, so that might help you as well, Randy. Thank you. Back to you, Vicki.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. That's excellent. I think you're doing that, and you should be doing that all the time in your business as well. Let's talk about your website, the front end of your website, because that's where people are coming. And user experience has become more and more important. I mean, everybody is requiring, they have less time and they're becoming more sophisticated, aren't they? So the goal of your website is to drive traffic. It's to convert the learners to a purchase, and it's to retain and re-engage those learners as much as possible. So your messaging, you got to get it right for the B2C. And also on your website, there needs to be some B2B messaging. Obviously, I mentioned SSO. It's important to get that as well. If that's not budgeted for you yet, make sure that you get that in your budget, because I think that if you're a nonprofit and you have an AMS or something, you need to get these things integrated. So be sure you have that on your radar. Obviously, the user experience here, there's many ways to see and track your user experience, what's happening there. You know, there's just so much sophistication in this area. Here at Citon, we have an internal marketing agency, and we work on these kinds of areas all the time to make sure websites are vibrant. They do change. There's kind of constant ongoing work as your content roadmap, you know, the catalog, how they select things, the users. So these are things that are dynamic. So you have to keep them dynamic and watch that. So this area of expertise is one of kind of our areas of specialty as well, because it's all about growing your e-learning business. Here's some areas just from a marketing standpoint. If you don't have an in-house marketing group, or they're really more focused in other areas, it's a good idea to bring someone else in these areas. But here's some quick tips. If you've got strong competition in your space, then you might want to really look at one tactic at using social media, where you can actually look at new potential users by going over to your competition. You can also make sure every time you launch or publish new content or something, make sure that you're creating that buzz with your learner audience. That's one traffic tip. Then I just threw a slide in here for conversion. I'm very visual and I love sliders when I go to websites, but they're not actually going to create, they actually are distracting. They typically push your content below the fold. So they don't impact conversion like people think they do. Just because they look good doesn't necessarily mean they work. They lower the page loading time, etc. So be sure you're talking to expertise, because my gut is I'm attracted to it, but it doesn't convert sales, by the way. Picking a hero image that's a powerful way to trigger your audience, but you've got to make sure you've got the right image. So that's another conversion tactic. And then retention. Retention is important because you are developing continuing education. So you want to re-engage your learners all the time. With your e-commerce application, you can have some advanced tactical. There's advanced e-commerce that you can go and develop in a more of an ongoing way. Having promo codes and special discounts to talk to people and re-engage people to get them excited about things is important. And obviously, I brought up drip learning a little bit. I do think it's important to build retention strategies into your learning so that you can communicate with them in a very short way. I mean, people are consuming content at different, smaller bites. So making sure that you have another additional touch point in the relationship is another great tip for retention as well.
Vicki, I have a question that I'm dying to ask the group, and it looks like it's the perfect time. Of those on the webinar today at your organization, how many of you have a very clear means by which to measure your leads versus conversions into actual sales? If you'd raise your hand, if you have a clear, unambiguous system in which you can measure leads as opposed to conversions, raise your hand. Just leave them up there just for a moment. Leads and conversions. In other words, you know how many people come to your website or visit a certain area, and then you know the percentage that actually convert to sales. All right, so we're going to leave that open. Just go ahead and raise your hand, leave them up, and I'm going to let you know the count here in just a minute. It looks about like less than 10%. Less than 10% right now, Vicki, have that capability from this unscientific casual poll. But anyway, I think that might be food for thought in regard to the areas that you're talking about here in that last section.
Oh, I'm really glad you paused here and got that feedback, because that's a very important area. I mean, this is one of the areas when we partner with organizations, it's not in their core competency. This is why I like partnering models, because, when you come in, and not every organization can do everything, and coming in and combining efforts and understanding roles and responsibilities just taps into the power of that. And this is an area of knowing where people are, why they are or not purchasing in an advanced way, and tracking that for re-engagement is very important. And if only 10% can do that, that's an area that you need to really flag as, I need to know more about that, and how can we do that better. So I would say pay attention to that. That's an important growth strategy. Do we have any other questions at this point? I'm going to jump back in then. What do you think, Joe?
Yes, please. No additional questions right now.
Okay, good. So now another area for growth, when you've got all these areas, you've got to have a consumer-facing LMS. If for some reason you don't, I mean, if it takes forever to find out how to buy something on your site, then you need to change that. So having a consumer-facing way to transact immediately is important, and you can build that, snap that on. You don't have to change your learning management system to do that. You can get a plug in there and make that happen. That's one area. But also, when you're selling to organizations, you need to be able to transact their purchase orders through invoicing. If you're doing the API where people are consuming content and you're just tracking the activations, you'll need to have an access agreement for that. So being able to transact finance services are important. So if you don't have that, that's an element that you'll need to definitely pay attention to. There's also an area that I always bring up for people, because you have to understand VAT. What is VAT? VAT is a value-added tax. And in the EU, learning products and content applies in the EU. So you have to have a way to manage VAT. People in the United States aren't as familiar. So if you're going more global and you're trying to get out and expand in global, we do a lot of global initiatives. You understand VAT. VAT was introduced like in 1918 by Siemens, actually, General. He was in Germany. He's an industrialist, and he started it out. France in 1954 actually introduced VAT into the country, and that's about 50% of revenues to France come from VAT. So it's an important area in some countries. Keep track of that as you go global, because although there's no VAT in the US, Puerto Rico is replacing their sales tax with this. They replaced it in 2016, so we may see that impacting e-learning content in Puerto Rico. Also in the UAE, and you mentioned that you had been working in the Middle East market in UAE, they're going to introduce VAT in 2018. So when they do that, we'll need to understand if it applies to learning products. So keep that on your radar when you're expanding globally. It's important. Okay, now we're to an important, we're coming closer to the end of our session today, and I want to make sure that we don't miss this. This is in our learning objectives. Building your pricing strategy is critical. So I want to make sure, I think this graphic tells a story. I hope it does. But your investment is your bucket of money and what you have to spend on the learning content. And so, and you know, you have to do the market research to understand what the market will bear for the MSRP, and that's where it's going to hit a learner for. Then you've got to factor in all the touch points in your strategy where you might have an advantage. If you're a nonprofit, you have a member association, there need to be advantage having a member price versus non-member pricing. You're going to bundle courses together in a different offering. There's going to be some kind of bundle discount involved. You're going to have promo codes. You'll have perhaps some affiliate relationships that will have referrals to your website that you need to pay them a percentage or royalty. You'll have volume purchasers. That's when you're selling to a corporation whose employees are going to be taking the training, and they're going to send all their employees through your educational process, or a large number. You want to make sure that you provide them discounts based on the number of learners that they're going to be purchasing. And then you have distributors. One of the fastest ways to grow is through channels, and we're gonna head there next.
Vicki, just real quick, this will take less than 30 seconds. I just put together a really quick poll question for everybody. Which of the following do you use in your programs? And that way it runs down the list of what you just provided precisely. So if everybody wants to take just a couple seconds, we won't spend more than another 10 seconds on this poll. We'd really love to know which of these strategies you use in your learning organization. And thank you for the leverage there, Vicki. I appreciate your flexibility. I was just dying to know that. It's very, very helpful to me in my job. So we'll close now, and let's see what we have as far as the results of what our people say. There we go.
Great. Ooh, promo codes. I'm surprised on the reseller that only 20% are using resellers. So let's share a little bit about that. I'm glad that people recognize that volume purchasers deserve best pricing, and all these various touch points are key. It's great that bundled, I mean, I think bundles are a great value to your customers, and taps them into kind of more of a learning track as well. So I don't know that I'm surprised by this, but I think the reseller area I'm a little bit surprised. So let's explore that a little bit.
All right.
Thanks for taking over on that poll. That's great.
So we can. Any other thoughts on why do you think resellers are less than the other strategies for promoting your courses?
I think probably it's very easy just to go to market and start selling the items, but really not partnering with resellers maybe hasn't been looked at. In the United States, there's more need to go into reseller market as you go global as well, because in some markets you need to work through a local agent. Probably when you're in China and in the Middle East market, it's important to use local agents to bring you into that market. So we can talk about that a little bit.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and hide this particular poll result if you'd like, and if anyone has questions on that. I didn't mean to distract from your track there, but that was just a question that I thought would be very, very interesting to ask our group. So thank you
No,
again.
I appreciate it. No, I appreciate that. Okay, we've talked about the B2C, and now I just want to really kind of hone in on the B2B part of it, because remember when I said learners versus buyers. So when you're selling into the B2B market, now you need to identify the corporate employers or organizations that you serve, and what are those various titles, because as you nurture, when you talked about having a robust marketing way to nurture those audiences so that you can generate leads, knowing those specific titles for professional development in each area are important. So it's going to be very different in the hospitality industry. Who's that title that you're targeting than it is in a landscape business, or for leadership training, for example. So this is very important for you to identify titles in the B2B market, and that's because that's where your learners work. And make sure that then you're addressing that as you begin to nurture that audience. Let me go to this next slide really quick. When we talked about, I'm glad that most of the audience is doing volume discounts. So your bulk pricing, I just call that bulk pricing because it just means volume pricing. Identify based on your price of your course, for example, what your quantity breaks should be. And you have to do your market research on this. You have to go out and find out for a particular course, how generally in an organization, how many people is it? Is it a large group or is it smaller? Yeah, usually your high-end courses, we sell one that's about $1,600 a person. So the price breaks are better with smaller quantities of students, but the percentages all vary. But generally speaking, you're playing around with about 20% of margin in these kind of areas. Got to be careful. That's why pricing your product properly with all the touch points is very critical. Also, what is an extended enterprise? Because you said that a lot of you have resellers. Well, let's talk about extending your enterprise because it's important. So if you look at your learning lives over here in your platform, there's ways we have specific distribution technology, for example, that we plug in. LMSX means we're integrated into either AMS and LMS, where we can then reach into groups with a tool that allows us to really expand and bring that content into that. So identify the distribution channels that are available to you. Who are they in your market? And are they ready and willing to resell your organization's content? Then you can give them the technology to be able to do that and manage the course sales. Because you have to think of inventory with resellers. Learning content becomes inventory. So you have to have the distribution technology to support that. We can plug that in very easily. Leverage all the business support services, including the marketing, the tracking, the nurturing, and that'll support the business development side of it. And then obviously you close with the financial services and reporting. That reporting is very key. And obviously, do you have a call center that can service the learners? Because you not only are selling to B2B, but you got to make sure the learner's good with, do they get stuck in the content? So call center support's important as well. So we just call this the 3 R's. It's reach. How do you increase the reach, revenue, and reputation of your organization? Well, you can do that through developing an extended enterprise. Now, channel. We said something about channels. The channel is not in Webster's. I can tell you that right now, not how we're defining it. A channel is someone that you sell through. And, in technology, in IT world, sometimes they're called VARs or distributors or something like that. It might be a large training. It might be, I know in the safety industry, they can sell through safety equipment distributors. They can sell learning through that because they're hitting those. For a safety industry that, you could take safety content and sell that through equipment distributors. So that might be an example of one. Sister societies and local chapters and organizations are also excellent channels because that is where they have a local community already. So you want to support that. Last, I just want to go over it quickly. Online Key Manager is a distribution tool that allows us to deliver training and inventory right into those channels. They get all the LMS functioning from the reporting. A key is just a seat or an enrollment in a class. So that's one form of doing it. You can manage groups that way. And obviously a smart link, being able to connect the LMS to another LMS for large groups, and having a fully integrated solution is another easy tactic with distribution technology. That'll help grow your business. And I know we're coming close to the end of our time together, and this is a summary slide. So this will explain your learning content lives here at the top. You may have affiliates that can send you traffic directly into your portal. So you see that arrow going from affiliate directly to you. You might have learning ambassadors in your industry that can have a tool where they buy inventory. They blend it with maybe some live workshops. They can distribute that way. And then you have resellers and distributors that kind of take things out of the LMS to their customers or directly into an LMS. Some of the large content resellers do this. And then obviously our direct channel directly to the corporate user that's purchasing in volume. So I hope that that slide kind of gives you the overview of how to use distribution technology. Last but not least, we've got to say...
Yeah, we're just about at the top of the hour, but we do have one question. I want to make sure that we get it in, so I'm going to leave it until your last section here. But if you have any final questions, you may want to ask them now of the audience, or if any of the audience members have questions, please submit those now. And we'll be, we know it's right at the top of the hour, so we'll be expediting our way out as soon as we close with this section.
Perfect. So anybody, let me know, Joe, if you've got some questions, and I'll just wrap up with the fact that you need to use analytics to drive your business. You know, that's one of the ways, and there are many tools out there for you to go look at. You should be able to look on a dashboard each day and know the health of your business. That data will really help you. And any questions from anyone? We're just ready to wrap up.
Yes, we have a question from Denise. I think it's a really good one. Denise asks, are the flashy designs still a big selling point with buyers, or are you seeing a trend where buyers are more, quote, educated in instructional design and thus looking for the pedagogical quality in the course they purchase? Style over substance. What are your thoughts?
Oh, we're working on a project right now that is not flashy at all, and it's fully adaptive. It's more testing as learning. And it's actually a medical board, and they're moving their MOC completely to this model because these are very busy medical physicians, and they are going to come in and be able to all through the year go in and just look at the items and get out to resources. So that's not flashy at all, and they are very excited to transform that versus a flashy item. So I think you're right. I think they're much more sophisticated. And there's much more ways to manage mastery. So you've got these competent people. You want them to get in and get what they need and get out. And I think flashy is going away, and consumption in get it consumed in a very strong instructional design way. Make sure they can consume it, learn from it, and it's not just showy. So you're right. So you don't have to be tech driven. You know, but you really can build these things based on that audience, what that audience needs, and they'll tell you. Well, I think I'm ready to wrap up. I just wanted to leave some final thoughts of, you know, you have the power to lead your industry. You know, don't be tech savvy, but not tech driven. It's really about people, and it's about services, and to build a model that you can reinvest in.
All right. Well, that will do it for today. Vicki, any final thoughts then?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for sharing. I thought some of these questions were fantastic, and I hope the resources are helpful for you. We're available. I think our marketing department has probably a shameless plug here also. If you want to download a white paper on the art and value of building credentialed training, you can go to our site and download that. And then again, the resources are all listed here for you. So I just thank you again for taking time out of your day to spend time with us.
Thank you, Vicki. And for those of you who would like a copy of this presentation, it is in the handouts area. It is there. It's called IACET PPT Final.pdf, and you're welcome to download that. We thank all of you for taking time today. Don't forget to visit us at our website, IACET.org.